Welcome to MacGyver's Workshop, where you never know what we're going to be working on next. If you're not too careful, you just might learn something. Hi there. Welcome to another episode of MacGyver's Workshop, where you never know what we're going to be working on next. And if you're not too careful, you just might learn something. So today, we're going to be in my little music room / studio, and I've got an interesting story to tell you. So I worked up this little piece of music as a little side project. It's about a little 1.5-minute clip, showing it to a good friend of mine, my boss actually, but anyway, he listened to it and he took a really keen interest in how it was actually made. And you know, I think of course he was really just more breaking balls than anything, but it kind of gave me a thought. You know, it'd be interesting to show just how, you know, not all, but a good portion of music is made nowadays. Now it comes in a couple of different flavors. You know, you got people who take bits and clips of pre-recorded music and stick them together in a computer and then call that music. Well, and yes, that's an art form in itself, but this is more akin to a modern taking of, you know, how it used to be done in the good old days, where, you know, you're doing multi-track recording. And the only thing different between now and then is I don't have an Otari 2-inch 24-track tape recorder in here. I'm using the computer as the audio recorder through a very high-end interface. So let's get started. One of the first things you got to do is we got to power this whole rig up. So I don't like hunting down power switches and extension cords and all that. So when I built this, I have it all on one main master. And I'll turn my 23-inch monitor on up there. And whoops, that was already on. Let's turn that on. This here is a piece of old school. This is a there's a SCSI 1 hard drive that this thing boots off of. So we'll let that all come up, and then we'll fire the digital audio workstation up. And I'll give you a little quickie tour here. Now in my workstation, I use Windows. Now there's you know, a lot of folks use Apple, and whoops, I didn't type that right. I don't particularly care for Apple equipment. I know Pro Tools is the bomb and all that, but to me it just seems like a big money grab. I tried Pro Tools, and every time you turn around you needed another $100 this or $50 that. And myself, I use Studio One Professional, which is a digital audio workstation software. And what that does is that gives you a little bit of everything. You know, I can do my digital hard disk recording for audio, but then I've also got a MIDI sequencer in there, and I've got, you know, virtual instruments. Now we're going to bring up, just for the sake of my friend that was asking me about this stuff. I'm trying to hold the camera, so I'll apologize for it. We'll bring that up. And this song has about 20 tracks in it of different stuff. And the trick to doing something like this is you do it, you know, a piece at a time. So somebody like Michael Cretu of Enigma You know, he's one guy, so he does everything with keyboards and synthesizers and drum machines and things like that, but he has to put it together one piece at a time. So okay, so let me just crank this up here, and with everything on, nothing soloed, so you get an idea. So this is the track that I posted to my Facebook yesterday, and the one that my friend or my boss heard. Now, that's actually a sum of all its parts. So basically, now, about the only thing, the one instrument that I am good at, of course, is the keyboards. So, you know, I can play that. But when it comes to stuff like the drum tracks and all, I have to break it down into easily manageable chunks. So, if I take, and let me solo out this one track here, and this is just one part of the drums. So if you listen, alright, so that's one part of it. And then you have the kick drum. Let's just do that by itself. This is all just part of that one little intro piece. Alright, and then there's one cymbal crash at the very beginning of the piece. And that's all that does, is one cymbal crash. Right there. And whoops. And then up here, a little more complicated bit of stuff going on here, if you listen to it. That's kind of the hi-hat and a secondary snare. So, you know, that's partially some of the tricks that, you know, studios do to fill out a music track to make it sound so good. Because, you know, if you ever hear a band live, you know, they don't hardly ever sound like what you hear on the record. And that's because, you know, they can do a little musical sleight of hand here and have like 8 drummers playing at once, which makes for a really fat sound, which sounds awesome in your MP3 player, but it's nigh on impossible to do live unless you have 8 drummers. Now you put all those drum bits together and this is what you end up with. So that's the intro part to the drums for the intro part, and that's why I had to buy that, because this one little bit right here I had an immense amount of difficulty with. If you'll listen to it. Right there. That little triddle there that they do with the sticks. It's like, that's nigh on impossible to program into a MIDI track. And here is the MIDI track for that drum part. And basically it's just the snare playing. And here I'll play it so you can see it. That's it. Now, in theory, I could write a drum track by just plugging these little notes in here, you know, and doing stuff like that. But the trick is knowing where and how to put them in there. So it's pretty wild. But it was impossible for me to get that phrasing of that drum part if you listen to it again. Not all I'm good for is about the 4 or 5 hits of the tap, 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 tap at the end. So, and if you look at it on a sequencer piano roll there, all it is like a straight line, because all the notes are so close together. I mean, it's pretty trippy. And then down here are all the different velocities and of each note. You know, some are played harder than others and all, and that's part of what makes that drum piece sound like it does. So let me get over to here to the drum kit and I can show you. So basically, now if you're writing a straight 4-time piece in a MIDI sequencer, then you know that's kind of easy, because you know you can do a simple, you know, with your hi-hat and then your kick drum and your snare, you know. You know, that stuff's easy to program because you can visualize that. You know, it's tut, 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 with the hi-hat, and then the one bump for the kick, and then the one for the snare, and you know they're so far apart in time and stuff like that's easy. But when you get something like a marching band type drum roll where the snare drum's kind of going with a bounce on the stick, like that, something like that is very difficult to write in a MIDI sequencer. That doesn't mean it can't be done. There's some guys out there who are pretty good, way better than I am. But you know, it just behooved me to go ahead and go buy the kit and figure it out and play it crappily, I might add, and then fix it in post-production. And literally that's how 99.9% of the music you hear on the radio is done. But you know, I think it's a valuable tool as long as it's not abused. You know, you've got people that got no business standing behind a microphone that are making way more money than I am at it. And it's, I've always said that, you know, there's better talent begging for change on the streets of Nashville, you know, than in a lot of cases on pop radio anymore. But that's my opinion. I'm not trying to offend anybody, so don't anybody get butthurt. But anyway, so you basically have the kit to where I can do those little crazy pieces of the drum parts and put them in to the computer, and then be able to you know, fix my mistakes, you know, without having to record it and play it 500,000 times. So, and plus it's a really cool kit. You know, I was really impressed. I mean, back in the day, back in the 90s and the 80s when I was playing, you know, MIDI drum kit was crap. But now, I mean, geez, they've come a long way with this stuff. You know, stuff really sounds real. And I got a double kick pedal here so I can do my speed metal if I want to. It's a lot of fun. So, anyway, let's get back to making some music here. Now the next part would be the bass line, and you would do the bass line pretty much the same as you would on a, you know, like the drum track. Play it out through the MIDI track, and then what I do is, once I write out the MIDI track and the MIDI track is playing, then I bounce it down to an audio track. So there's the audio track for the bass guitar, and if I go ahead and play this, I'll go ahead and solo just this one track here. You'll hear it course, there's nothing there just yet. That's the drums intro. And then you should hear it coming up. And that's how you do that. And that's done through this device here. This is a Roland Integra 7. What that is it's called a multi-timbral sound module and synthesizer. And it's basically the guts of the giant synthesizer, or a bunch of different synthesizers actually. It's capable of reproducing every synthesizer Roland ever made from day one, supposedly. And then I control it from this keyboard here. Now, right now I've got the trumpet section queued up, but the bass line just comes along and plays out through the whole song. And bring in the rest of everything. So that's how you do that. And then as far as the brass section goes and the strings, that's all done from the keyboard. And then what you have to do basically is you build your song up a piece at a time, and that's how you do it. Now that's way different from, you know, actually playing in the band. You know, back in the day we got to do all that, and that was a lot of fun. But nowadays, when you're sitting in your studio by yourself and you don't have a whole gang of people, you know, you can still be creative and still be musical and come up with this stuff. And now the actual song itself was written, what I'm doing is a cover of a song. So to cover a song, I basically have to learn the song and then, you know, and build it up myself. I don't have a band that I can put together and play all this stuff and record it. You know, that's kind of how we did it back in the day, but nowadays you just build it up like that. And of course my history in music has been a little bit of jazz, a little bit of blues. So, you know, I kind of get into the more funky style of playing, to where if you're doing a piece like, well, let's say this here, which I would always call this like a CG jam. So that's always been a heck of a lot of fun, especially you get a couple of jazz and blues guys together. Oh, it's amazing. Well, thank you for watching this little impromptu clip that I put together here, and let's take it out with the song from start to finish. Let me flip the camera around here. Crazy with a little bit of